All right. Well, hello everyone. My name is Sabrina Zarifi. I'm the manager of our Step Ahead, senior manager of our Step Ahead team. And I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us today for our webinar, Powering Your Growth, Mentorship and Sponsorship in Manufacturing. The manufacturing would like to thank Howmet Aerospace for sponsoring today's webinar. Their support helps makes this conversation like this possible and reflects a strong commitment to developing talent, strengthening leadership, and investing in the future of manufacturing. For those who may be joining us for the first time, the Institute is the workforce and education affiliate of the National Association of Manufacturers, and our team is committed to building the manufacturing workforce of today and tomorrow. We support manufacturers through large-scale programs like Heroes Make America, Step Ahead, FAME, and our workforce innovation initiatives. Today's webinar focuses on an important part of professional growth, understanding the role both mentorship and sponsorship can play in advancing careers, expanding visibility, and creating new opportunities. Today, our speaker, Pat Hume, CEO and co-founder of Vector GFX and principal of Advanced Mentorship. With more than 40 years of executive leadership experience, Pat brings deep expertise and a strong passion for helping professionals grow through the power of mentorship and sponsorship. So I am going to pass it off to Pat.
Hey. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. I'm getting things set up here. Can everybody hear me? Lexi, are we coming through, Sabrina? Okay, wonderful. First of all, thank you very much for taking the time today. This is a very important topic. It's super important to me personally, professionally. After 48 years in the technology sector, both on the software side, serving the manufacturing industry, traveling all over the world, one of the things that I really spend a lot of time doing is thinking about how can I give back. And my stories, my travel, the mentorship I received, the help that I received has been instrumental in helping me advance in my career. So today, I hope to share with you and have you be able to take away. So, what is a mentor? What's the role of a mentor? What do I mean by advanced mentorship? We'll talk a little bit about that thesis and why I think it's extremely important today and going into the future. We're going to talk about the mentee. Yeah, and what is the role of the mentee? What obligation does the mentee have in order to really, get the full potential of the mentor's wisdom, the mentor's help, the mentor's guidance? You see here a particular backdrop. We'll talk a little bit about why this backdrop is being used in the presentation. And the topic today, of course, is advanced mentorship. But the title of today's presentation is already waiting within, and there's a reason for that as well. So I started my career in 1979, so we can do the math. I've been doing it for quite a while. And, through this time in industry, we all know that technology has changed dramatically, right? I mean, there was no cell phone, there was no internet, there was really no mentorship programs back in 1979. Our markets have changed. We've become more of a global economy. The technology is driving market change, yeah. And certainly titles change. My title changed. My gosh, I can't tell you how many times over the 48 years. But I've been blessed to be able to hold just about every job there is in a business. And that was part of my journey. That was part of a deliberate, on my point, to try to learn everything I could in order to be an effective leader and now hopefully an effective mentor. Human potential doesn't change, right? The common denominator, we're all human. We all have needs. We all need help at any point in time in our lives. It needs to be seen, our potential needs to be challenged and it needs to be revealed. So why this backdrop? What's Pat doing with the statue of David? Michelangelo said, I saw an angel in the marble and I carved it until I set him free. And why is that important? I think it's important that we realize that Michelangelo viewed his process as a, I'm so sorry, I'm playing with buttons. I shouldn't play with buttons. Anyway, am I, what's going on? Okay, here we go. Michelangelo viewed sculpting not as a process of creating the shape, but as an act of discovery. So I think what I'm here to talk to you about today is we're not here as mentors to create our mentees. And our mentees aren't here to be, shaped into something that they're not. We're here to discover together the potential that is within. Yeah. So we're not here to create a person. I can remember, and I'm going to tell you a bunch of stories throughout this presentation because I think we learn through our stories. They're real, they bring this reality to us, someone else's experience. But we really are here to reveal the true potential that a person already possesses. So, like Michelangelo, he carved away the marble to reveal the angel within. And here, um, my thesis is that mentorship is about sort of getting rid of the excess noise and allowing the mentor and the mentee to discover what is already there. So, the objective of advanced mentorship, as I practice it, is revelation over reconstruction. Um, when I was first starting in my career, I worked at IBM right out of college. And I remember my first manager calling me in and saying to me, we're going to mold you in the IBM way. And I remember I was young, I was 21 years old, and I can remember thinking, I don't want to be molded in the IBM way. Not that I didn't even know what it meant, candidly. I didn't know what the IBM way was, but the concept of taking me as an individual and making me something else by molding me to fit some construct didn't feel really right to me. Yeah. And I always tell people, don't put your head on your mentee's shoulders. In other words, you know, I'm been doing this for an awful long time. And with age comes wisdom. With age comes life experience. So I've been through things that some of you haven't yet experienced. And, some of it I hope you never have to experience, right? But to try to say, well, what of this don't you understand? That's like putting my head on your shoulders. And that is not the objective of revelation over reconstruction. And the method is, true human connection. Um, I was at IBM, I was at SAP, I was out of a lot of large corporations, and we had mentorship programs. Especially as time evolved, it became more and more apparent to corporate companies, big and small, that the ability to help advance our talent would indeed help advance the company and the company's success. And I think in a lot of instances, there were a lot of mentorship programs that companies developed. Yet I would argue, at least my experience was, we didn't do a great job at really training our mentors or even setting the appropriate expectation for our mentees. So I believe wholeheartedly this is not a casual kind of check the box exercise. Oh, I'm mentored and I've been mentored, check the box. It isn't a one and done process. And we're going to talk a little bit about, well, if it's not that, then what is it, right? Before we get into that, I now am on my third startup. Back in September, I founded another business, I've been actively involved in building this new company, and we hire people of all ages because we need people of all ages. We need the younger generation because they bring a perspective and an energy that helps keep me current. Yeah. And we also hire older people like myself because we need that wisdom and that knowledge. But when I look at sort of the modern mentee today, and this is really not an age chart slide, yet it kind of is, but we're all always connected, right? We're always on. And it's a instant response world, right? And we can know anything we need to know through our mobile devices, through our laptops, through our social media, whatever it is we use. We are constantly measured, especially in the workplace. And whether it's obvious or not obvious, we're constantly measured. And by the way, we're not just measured by our bosses or our peers, we measure ourselves, right? We set expectations for ourselves, we set goals for ourselves. So we're in this constant, are we doing good enough, right? I think we're quietly isolated. And the reason I think we're quietly isolated is this device here, this phone, doesn't talk back to me in a human way. Yeah. And so there is this kind of loneliness I see, I hear. We're in remote offices. We had a massive time of work from home, study from home. Yeah. And I think that drove this quiet isolation that I don't think it's gone yet. I don't know if it'll ever be gone. We are certainly flooded with data. What do you want to know? Ask Gemini, ask Claude, ask ChatGPT. You can get more information about anything than I have ever seen in all of the years that I've been in industry. And I think we are all starved for wisdom. I don't care whether you're my age or whether you're just getting started. An ability to know, to have that knowledge, right? That I don't know, wisdom is calming in a sense. Yeah. It gives us a sense of confidence, if you will, without arrogance. And for me, I think the greatest risk we face today is not lack of skill. There's so much talent out there. It's more about this unrealized potential. So we have to break through these barriers. We have to break through as mentors, but we also have to be receptive as mentees. So let's talk about the architecture of impact, the role of the mentor. Okay. The mentor is our foundation, right? The key thing about the mentor is I have been mentored by different people, some of whom really articulated their bias. Yeah. And again, it goes back to I will mold you in the IBM way. Well, that was a bias. That was a thought process on the part of that gentleman to say to me, well, this is what you have to be, right, to fit in here. I think mentors have to be highly self-aware. We have to sort of put aside what our known biases are and be open, right? Open to listening. And we're going to talk a bit about listening in a tiny bit. You know, human connection requires an emotional connection. Now, a lot of us don't want necessarily an emotional connection, but I talk about the concept of intimacy within boundary. Yeah, I've mentored an awful lot of people through my career, and I do it for a living now as part of what I do to give back my need, my deep need to give back. Yeah, but I can't mentor without an ability to have an emotional presence. And to the point where we laugh, we cry, we talk about things that, old fashioned mentorship programs probably wouldn't include. Um, Mentors have to give the gift of attention. Yeah. Your mentors are probably in management, maybe not, doesn't have to be, but we're easily distracted. Why? Because we're always connected and we're always curious. Well, just pinged. Who's calling me? What's going on? What happened in social media? You have to shut down the noise if you're going to be a mentor. You have to put it all aside, and your 100% focus needs to be on the individual that you're working with, sitting next to, teamsing, whatever modality you're using to communicate with the individual. Cognitive empathy. It goes back. These things are all sort of intertwined, yeah? Um, we may have biases that when the mentee says something, we say, oh, well, that's stupid. No, nothing's stupid, right? Listening and trying to understand the perspective of that individual with cognitive empathy is critically important to build trust. Because how do if your mentor is making faces or saying something that is biased, I think we shut down. We feel it's not safe. Yeah. Radical candor, the hard truths. I had a brilliant young engineering female that worked for me in my last startup, and she was extraordinary. Um, she had some issues with collaboration and working well with her peers. We had a lot of hard conversations about that sort of her approach, where she felt her knowledge was her power. And we know that. We've heard that before. Knowledge is power. Her knowledge was the power that she needed to share with her colleagues, not hold it close to the vest so she was the smartest person in the world. I watched her evolve from this closed, it's my power, it's me, to someone who learned how to open up and share that knowledge to allow the entire team to thrive and feel close together to work as a true team. And the open door, generosity of spirit, right? It's not a one and done, guys. So if we are looking to say, hey, I want to be a mentor, I want to be able to help other people, it's not an hour a month. It's a process. And depending on what the goals of the mentee are, that process can take time. And another very critical aspect of this is, you know, mentors are not the hero. We're not. The hero is the mentee. So we are not the hero of our mentee's story. And we have to recognize this. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you a story because I'm going to intertwine true stories. These are very emotional for me. These are very passionate times in my life. These were game changers for me. I was 25 years old. I was at IBM and I got my first manager's job. And I was like, wow, look at me. I'm a manager. Aren't I cool? I'm 25 and I'm already a manager. Well, trust that at 25, I was probably blindly ambitious. I wanted to be king of the hill, the whole thing. All right. So we live and learn, and we hope to evolve and find the real person within. But anyway, I was leading a team of 18 factory workers. IBM Endicott, which is where I was a factory. We were a very large factory. We covered, I don't know, 20 city blocks. And we manufactured circuit boards, we manufactured bank machines, we manufactured printers. So we did, all the things that you guys, as people that work in the manufacturing sector, we designed, we developed, we built, we shipped, right? So I was in a group that did supply demand planning. How many orders came in? How much inventory do we need? And how do we balance the workload on the factory floor? That's what I did. And 18 guys and gals worked for me. They had been on the factory floor. So they knew the job a hell of a lot better than I did. Yeah. And in the day, there was someone called a team technician. And she was the lady that was the sort of the expert And she helped me understand what I didn't know. Her job was to ensure that the communication between me and the team and things were working out correctly. She came in my office one day and she said, "Look, I have to be honest with you. Radical candor. Team thinks there might be a nice person in there, but they're not sure. They do not feel led by you at all." And I was like, oh my gosh. So I burst out crying because I do, and I still do. And it was a 2 hour conversation asking me, well, what do you know about? There was a gentleman named Bill Sullivan and Billy Sullivan. And I always talk about Billy Sullivan because she said, what do you know about him? What do you know about, the different individuals? What do you know about me? She asked. Her name was Helen Slocum. What do you know about me? Well, what she was doing is she was mentoring me to understand the importance of the human foundation, the human connection. And it wasn't a program. Nobody told her to do it. I was blessed because she recognized that the potential from within was there. And she wanted to start to help me reveal what was within. And so mentoring doesn't have to be official. It can be Helen Slocum walks in your office, walks over to your cube, teams you on Teams, whatever she may do, and starts to help you reveal and understand the potential within. But it took radical candor. It took her the ability to say to me, "You're not doing a good job at all." Okay. So mentors need to self select. All right. Everybody may think they're a mentor. I'm going to be a great mentor. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. I'm going to be really good at advanced mentoring. And there's different types of people that do not make good mentors. Of course, one is the ego architect, building a mini me. We talked about them, right? Instead of revealing the best within the mentee, all they want to do is reveal the best of themselves. Yeah. Um, the ghost. How many of you, and I'm not physically here to see you, but if you were in an audience with me and I have you raise your hands, how many times have you walked in someone's office that, or, over to their cube or wherever it is, and, they've asked you to come because they want to help you with something. And the whole time they're either looking at their phone or they're typing on their laptop or, the variety of distractions that happen in today's world, and we call that person the ghost. And I find it highly aggravating when I need the help or I've been asked to have this communication and I go in and the individual is too busy doing something else. Yeah. Um, the mechanic is the guy that wants to fix you. I'm going to fix you. This is what I see, and you're going to do this and this and this and this. And how uncomfortable is that? Yeah. I'll be another story. My daughter was in a very senior position in a bank, and her boss called her in and said, "Look, I'm going to tell you how to navigate the politics in this company, and these are the things you have to do." And he went on, and I won't list the things my daughter told me he said. And she called and she goes, "Mom, I can't do any of that because for me, it lacks integrity and I can't do this." And as her mother, first, I said, "Then don't." She goes, "But what's going to happen to my career?" I said, "Well, if it doesn't work out there because you won't compromise to fit the political landscape, then you're probably better off not being there." And that's what wisdom teaches us. Wisdom teaches us that we have to have the courage to, as we start to reveal from within, truly live it. Yeah. Not easy, not easy at all. I've been there, done that, where, we have obligations and fear and whatnot. Another young man that I'm mentoring was trying to raise capital and he got a very bad term sheet And he came to me and he said, "This is a terrible term sheet, but oh my gosh, I don't know what to do." I said, "I know what to do." He said, "What?" I said, "If you can, say no. It is a bad term sheet. You're going to hurt yourself and the company. So if you can do it, do it." And he texted me right before Easter and he said, "Thank you for the courage to say no. I found funding elsewhere and we have a fabulous term sheet." So that's the kind of thing we have to be true to ourselves. Yeah. And we have to make a commitment that we are truly invested as mentors. So for those of you in the audience today that think, "I want to be a mentor," you've got to ask yourself, are you really ready? Um, can you avoid these sort of traps? And can you be more of the architect that I spoke about on the prior page? And there's nothing wrong if you can't mentor. If it's not in your DNA to be the kind of person you need to be in order to really help your mentees, it's okay. But you need to ask yourself, are you really ready? So I have a code. And so this is really more Pat's code than maybe the mentor's code. Integrity is everything. People can take a lot of things away from you in life, but they can't take your integrity. They cannot, because it's yours. You built it, you own it, you live it. So I'm all about integrity. So when I promise to mentor, um, I open doors as a gift. It's not a loan. I will do it over and over and over. It's something I give, the advice, the counsel, whatever it is. It's not a loan. It's theirs. It's theirs to keep. And do with it as they feel is right. And we have a lot of conversations where this doesn't feel right. And I say, okay, well, let's talk about that and why. And how do we modify? And how do we make it feel better? Right? Safety is everything. You know, psychological safety is a term that I think has kind of evolved over the last decade or so. It wasn't a term that I ever heard in my coming up in my career. But it's really important that we have to recognize that we have to provide a safe environment. So trust is everything. Trust is everything. We can't mentor someone and then run out the door and talk about a conversation that we may have had with one of our mentors. We're a guide, we're not a savior. Yeah. And the reason we're not the savior is because it's the mentee who has to find what's within themselves, right? So that's the boundaries as safety. And then radical candor has to come with radical support. Because when Helen Slocum said to me, "Nobody likes you. You're really not good at what you do," right? That was radical candor. Now, if that's all she said to me, I don't think I'd be here today being able to talk about how I evolved on my leadership journey and how I evolved into the variety of jobs that I've had around the world, right? The support is as equal as the truth, is as equally as important as the truth. So tell them the truth, but stay with them, right? Because when we get told that we're not good at what we do, or that you got to relinquish your power, or you've got to lead with integrity, or whatever it is, we have to stay with our mentee as they process it and allow them to pick up the phone if they kind of hit a pothole and not sure which way to turn. Yeah. So I'm going to segue now to the mentee. Okay. My niece was here with me over Easter. My niece is very sick right now. I'm oversharing, but I tell you this because here's a woman that has a tremendous career. And despite everything, we sat and talked about mentorship. And I've mentored her for ever since she graduated college. She's in the software tech world and she's doing very, very well in her career. Um, Well, we were talking about, the mentee's role. And she said, she calls me Aunt P. Aunt P, a lot of what you have, because I showed her these slides, a lot of what you have here makes a lot of sense to me because no one told me, the mentee, what role I was supposed to play. Okay. So this is the architecture of receptivity. You have to be receptive. Okay. But guess what? You own it. So if you're a mentee in the audience and you're like, I want to get a mentor and I want to, gain some wisdom and I want to reveal my potential, you better understand that there are certain things you need to come to the table with. Radical curiosity is one of them. Beyond the how to the why, right? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to evolve? Why do you want to be in that role? Why do you have those questions? You've got to be curious. And it's curious, that curiosity goes beyond sort of this revelation of what's within to what's around. So it's in me and surrounding me. We must be curious. You have to own it. You have to drive the agenda and you have to own and execute the outcome. So, somebody asked me, phew, I know what it was. I was at an AI and education event last year, Jesus, sponsored by the state of Pennsylvania. And I was giving a presentation on the role of artificial intelligence in K through 12 education. And one little guy raised his hand and said, well, did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up? And I said, yep. I was quite young and I said to myself I wanted to be a CEO. And I didn't even know what a CEO was, but it sounded cool. And so that's what I wanted to be. I drove that agenda, probably not consciously, right? But in some way, shape, or form, I owned my outcome. I did every job that I could possibly do so that I could be in the trenches and lead from experience. Yeah. You have to be teachable. You got to trade ego for evolution. You know, when someone tells you you're not doing a good job or someone gives you radical truth, you have to accept it and you have to assimilate and think about it. If you start getting defensive, oh, no, you don't understand. It's not my fault. It was this, it was that. You're not highly teachable. So, as mentees, we have to be able to take a big, deep breath and say, "It's okay. I'll listen to this. It hurts my feelings. My heart hurts. I feel bad, but you got to feel bad to feel good. So, be teachable, right? Know where you want to go. The CEO discussion, right? What do you want to be? Oh, I want to be a CEO. By the way, I asked the kids what they want to be. Fascinating answers because I had third grade through seniors in high school, 500 of them in the room. But it's great. Still, there's still a lot of people that want to be teachers, thank God. A lot of people that want to be doctors. And then I was asking if anybody wanted to be an architect for the Mars habitat, and a few hands went up. Anyway, um, turning insight into action. We'll provide to our mentees insights, but it's your decision of how you make them take action, take root. Yeah. How do we apply what we learn? And this is the hardest one, vulnerability. If we're quietly isolated per the prior slide, and we're in this always on world, we're pretty vulnerable. Yeah. But we have to have that courage to be seen. I have coached a lot of folks that I've watched them, right? I've been blessed to have led teams all over the world, and I watch my teams come in, and you watch them present and whatnot, and you see you isolate on one of them, and you see them sort of sitting in the corner and not saying anything. Not sure why, but we find out. We try to reveal, what is that, a vulnerability issue? Is it a courage issue? Whatever. But that vulnerability is important. And as a mentee, You are the architect of your revelation. So you are the Michelangelo that's going to carve away the marble to find the angel within. So here's another story. And by the way, I tell stories. I told you this earlier, but we learn through stories that makes things much more real. So now I'm 27 and I got promoted to chief of staff to the general manager of this IBM manufacturing operation. And it was a multi-billion dollar operation. There were, I don't know, 75,000 people in Endicott, New York in those days. Yeah. And I got in promoted to this big job. And on the general manager's team was the CFO, the chief operating officer, the head of the manufacturing, at the head of engineering, the head of development, etc. And the CFO came up to me one day after one of the GM's operating meetings, and he said to me, "Look at Hume." He called me Hume. He was a military captain. "Look at Hume. Just because you're riding the general's Jeep doesn't mean you earned his stars." And so that was another sort of wow. Like, was I acting that egotistical? I mean, I don't know how I was being perceived. He did, right? And so what he said to me is, the fact that you have proximity to power doesn't mean you own it, doesn't mean you possess it. Certainly, you haven't earned it, right? So we have to learn, right, that it's about earning power. And I mean power in a good way, not power in a bad way, but earning that position. And by earning it, we also earn it with trust and some credibility and influence. So humility goes a long way. There's humble people are are easier to trust. I believe this is a Pat Hume. I believe when I meet someone who's humble and wise and more soft spoken, they tend to be more credible to me than a guy that comes in screaming and look at me, look at me. So the General's Jeep, remember it, okay? As you grow in your career, remember, right? Proximity to the power is not the same as possessing it, and it is something that must be earned. So we talked about mentor self-selection. Let's talk about mentee self-selection. Why aren't some mentees ready, right? Well, we got the guy that is looking for the map, but never wants to go on the journey, right? They like the idea of promotion, but they don't want to have to do the work of execution. Yeah. So we talked about the need for curiosity. We actually need the art of execution, right? So if your mentor has taken the time to help you draw your map, make sure that you have the commitment to execute. Yeah. We talked about radical candor as an attack versus an invitation to evolve. Um, and by the way, if you find yourself saying, I want to be mentored, and I do think that I am the architect of my revelation, and then you get a radical feedback and you defend it, that's okay because you're human. Okay? But you can't do it all the time. And if you've got a good mentor, the mentor's going to say, "Why are you defending yourself? What's the problem? Why is this sort of hitting stinging? Why does it hurt so much?" And that's the boundary discussion, right? We can't get too deep, but we got to get deep enough to help with the evolution. The mentor does not drive the execution, does not drive the agenda. The mentee has to be prepared. If you're going to ask your mentor to spend time through a period of a process, could be a month, could be 3 months, could be 6 months, could be a year, could be ongoing, who knows? You owe it to yourself and also from a respect perspective to your mentor to own and navigate, sort of the agenda and where you want to go. And then your commitment to be the one who will sculpt, do the sculpting, right? Own your evolution, right? Be your best you, right? Not a mini me of them, all right? So, like I say to the mentors, ask yourself, are you ready? Are you ready to think about all of this and then raise your hand? And do you know what you want and where you want to go? So, we're going to learn with ownership as mentees. We talked about it. No ego, right? The hard truths are data, they're not an attack. Vulnerability is safety, right? We have to recognize that we are, and we never will be perfect. The good news is we're always a work in progress. And thank heavens for that because every day we become better, right? If we hit that pinnacle of perfection, which doesn't exist, but we think it might, yeah, what's left? So, this ability to continually progress and evolve is something we have to be as mentees. And this curiosity and action, the why and the how, and then with our mentor by our side, execute in the trenches to be able to reveal that which is within. So, what happens? What's this? What happens when all this comes together and how does it all come together? Okay. So, we start with the concept of a shared blueprint, alignment of intent. Um, the mentor's foundation meets the mentee's vision. So, me as your mentor, I have a foundation of wisdom. Yeah. And I bring that wisdom to meet your vision. And together, we build this alignment of intent. We start that journey, right? Uh, I can't talk enough about trust, and you're probably getting bored with hearing it, but the old Irish tell you have to hear something 11.7 times for it to sink in. And I think I only used trust so far 6 times. So that means you're going to hear it 5.7 more times. But anyway, radical candor meets high teachability. So I have to be honest, maybe to the point where it's a hard truth, and you have to respond with a willingness to be taught. Okay. This generosity of spirit, right? Active engagement, that's the power. Without which we're not talking, we're not communicating. If I'm on my phone, if I'm not giving of myself, how can you give of yourself? Where is that? Where is that? Kind of, and I hate the word quid pro quo, but where is that catalyst of connection, right? And then the result, and it's not easy, but the result is you move from that quietly isolated world into one where we are professionally integrated because we are us. We have become the angel within. We are comfortable, we're more confident. Are we done? No. Um, open, honest. I'm 70 years old. I'm not done. Okay. I learn every day. I learn from the young people on my team. They tell me things I never thought of. They help me be a better mentor because I'm starting to understand the true cultural differences between a baby boomer and a Gen Z. But guess what? Remember in the beginning, I said that common denominator is human connection? So we're, as much as we're different, we're alike, which is what helps us realize the catalyst of connection. One more story. I think I only have one more. I'm now 29 and I got promoted to the controller. I was not a finance person, but my buddy Al, the General's Jeep dude, he was CFO and he and I got along great, despite he was very, yeah, we already said that, but he was very tough. He asked me to step in as controller and he said, don't worry, I'll be in the trenches with you. You don't have to worry. And I had this large team and it was controlling a manufacturing organization. So there was inventory, ROCA, all these things that I didn't even know. I had no idea. I learned it, obviously, but I was paralyzed. I went in his office and I said, "Oh my gosh, I can't do this job. It's just too much. I'm gonna fail. There's so much money here at stake, and there's so much value in the inventory, and blah 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 blah." And he looked at me and he said, "Do what you know how to do, and remember, it's only zeros." And so what he was saying to me is, "So it's $1 billion, not $1 million. Do what you know how to do." So this was the sort of a lesson in scale changes impact, but it never changes the integrity of the process. So I've managed billion-dollar P&Ls and I've managed zero revenue startups. And guess what? I do it the same way because Al taught me it's only zeros. Okay. So think about that when you get your next big promotion and all of a sudden the team is huge or the scope is huge or the dollars are big. It's only zeros. Do what you've been trained to do and do it with integrity. So I've asked to talk a little bit about sponsorship. So net, easy. Sponsorship's about access. Okay. I can get you access to the chairman of the board. Great. Okay. I can get you access to whatever, the CEO, the SVP, the VP, whomever it is. And mentorship is about growth. So when a senior leader uses their political capital to advance their protege's career, that's what sponsorship is. I was very fortunate. I had a lot of sponsors in my career, a lot of people, put Pat in this job, put Pat in this job. Very, very fortunate. Okay. Um, they have a seat at the table to influence hiring and promotion and high visibility, right? They can put you in special programs. They can do all sorts of interesting things that are what I would call sort of the first layer. Yeah. The primary goal is career advancements through breaking through the organization or the institution, right? I'm going to use my influence to help you get this role. So I look at sponsorship as muscle and advanced mentorship as heart. And we talked a lot about the heart side, okay? But on the sponsorship side, career trajectory. It's based on your performance and your potential, right? So you have to be you can't be sponsored if you're not a high performer with high potential. I mean, that's not 100% true. You can be, but if you're going to share your political capital to try to advance someone in the organization, you want to make sure that they're going to be able to perform, right? So that your political capital, and it's a reality. Okay, I'm not saying I agree, but your political capital isn't hurt by that. Yeah, we open doors that are otherwise locked, right? It's performance linked, and the result is a promotion. On this flip side, the result is your own power, your own person revealing what's inside, right? Deeply personal, right? And I would say that sponsorship can only get you so far. Um, Working on ourselves to be the best we can be is not only something that helps us in the workplace, but it helps us in our lives overall. Now, do we need both? Perhaps, right? I would say I had an equal amount of sponsorship and mentorship in my career that had helped me advance and learn the things that I needed to learn in order to be comfortable in taking the job. It's a personal reflection. Um, Sponsorship without mentorship is a gift that can break you. Okay. The worst thing that can happen is you getting a job you can't do. Oh, not because of the sponsor, but because of you, right? The hollow victory, right? I've been there, done that. I was 38 years old when I got my first CEO role in a publicly traded company. It was a 1.2 billion dollar market cap business. 38. I mean, who am I kidding? Right? I wasn't prepared. Um, and people that knew me then knew the story. I got very sick from the stress of being put in that position. Now you can go back and say, but Pat, you were told it's only zeros. Something happened in the year, it was probably 1998, 99. I probably have my years wrong. It was called the dot-com bust. Yeah. Our company I led, was a barter revenue business. The SEC came in during the dot-com burst and said, no more barter revenue. If it's not real money, you cannot recognize it. Our market cap went from 1.2 billion down to 300 million overnight. Now, that's not its only zeros. That was, oh my God, I have shareholders that just lost a ton of money and I'm not sure what to do. Okay. So that was I got sponsored into the job by the board and it broke me. The gift was really, I took a shortcut, right? I didn't have enough mentorship. I wasn't really prepared. So just remember my stories, and I'll talk to you. I have a ton of them, as you can imagine. Yeah. Um, Plus, you get one chance. When somebody decides to sponsor you, if you don't perform, doubtful they're going to sponsor you again. Yeah. So you get one chance. So make sure that you're really ready. And if your sponsor says, I'm going to put you in job A and you have any kind of internal discomfort about it, talk to your mentor about it and let's figure out whether or not it's a good idea or not. Okay. Self-respect, right? Failure creates doubt. When I that whole disaster, when the dot-com bomb happened, I fell into a position of I can't do anything right. And this was a time when I had two children in middle school, and I was flying all over the world and all this. Um, it turned out to be a great learning for me, but in the time, oh man, did it hurt? Yeah, and you know, public recognition, right, versus the private labor of becoming. I going back in time, if I were to go back in time, by the way, I'm not a woulda, shoulda, coulda girl, so I probably wouldn't have changed anything, but I would have loved to have had someone give me the insight of, you're not ready. Okay, so just keep that in mind as well. Um, I talk a lot, and I do a lot of mentoring, and I talk about, career pivot navigation. What is soft skills? How do we develop critical soft skills? How do we navigate conflict, right? Knowledge is power. And then, we as a human race have learned through stories through all the centuries that we've been on this planet. So, look, guys, success is not when they become you, it's when they reveal the master within themselves to fully step into their full potential. So I'll go back to the beginning and say what was on the sort of the landscape slide. The greatest risk today is not the mentee's lack of skill, but our lack of courage to see their true potential. So thank you very much. I'll stop there and we'll open up for questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Pat. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. First question that we have for you, Pat, is from Nancy Bailey. She asked, is the mentee process the same for those further along in their careers, or does it need slight adaptations? If adaptations are needed, please explain.
Yeah, it's a great question, Nancy. Thank you for the question. Look, I think the process is the same. Okay. So it's the concept of all the things we talked about. It's just that the so process stays the same. It's the questions that are different. Okay. It's sort of that self-reflection is going to be a little bit different because you're a little bit further along in your career, right? So I hope that makes sense, but that's a short answer to a very good question, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Brandy might have a question. I know her hand's been up for a little while. Maybe not. I will move on. Thomas Robbins asked, some say that if one waits until they are ready, they will never ascend in their career. How does one balance readiness versus stagnation?
Yeah, it's a great question. My answer to that would be you always have to push as hard as you can. You got to push the boundaries. Okay. It's scary as heck. You're never going to be ready because you don't know what it is you're going into. Right. So it's, am I going to be able to be a CEO? Well, if you've never been a CEO, how do you know whether you're going to be a CEO? So I'm a push the boundary girl. Okay. And I'm a big fan of push the boundary. That said, um, this internal reflection, this internal self-assessment, if you have a mentor, bouncing that stuff off your mentor and really a radically true self-assessment will assess your comfort level on how far you can push those boundaries. So set your goal, decide what's that end look like, right? And do it. Okay. Well, and I'll give you another story. I started my first startup when I was 64 because in my life I always wanted to do a startup. So it's never too late, I guess, is the other thing. So while we may stall, the time will come. Yeah. As long as we really see that as our journey. And I hope that helped. But push the boundary, man. Just push it.
Thank you. Our next question is from Julia Berry. Do you have some resources you can share with us for locating and or selecting mentors for folks further along in their career?
I do. We can talk about it offline if you want to reach out to me. Sabrina knows how to get to me. I mean, I throw it out. I'm not unwilling to give you my mail account. But let's talk about that. That's a great question. I think it'll surprise you the answer. Okay, so let's spend some time on that if you'd like.
Nicole White is asking, what does it look like to engage in mentee or mentor relationships in a remote environment versus in person?
Yeah, great question. I think we are learning. I think we've learned or are learning how to do this stuff remote. I love to present in person because I want to see you all and I want to watch you and I want to see how you're reacting. I can't, right? When it's a one-on-one, I can see Sabrina perfectly. So, I've done a lot of remote mentorship. In fact, I do mostly remote mentorship because people are everywhere. Yeah. Um, I think what we have to do is we have to set that expectation when we start our mentorship that we're not going to sit in the same room and that we have to make sure we're both comfortable with it. I have no issue with it. And as long as my mentees are okay with it, through time, by the way, it gets better, right? After you get through that initial, I'm not sure about you, you're not sure about me, blah, 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 blah. The more time you spend together, the more you feel like you've known them your whole life. So I don't think it's a problem remote. I prefer face to face, but we can't always do it.
Thank you. We'll have a couple more questions because we're almost at the top of the hour. But Amber Jewett asked, how do you feel about peer-to-peer mentorship? Any considerations to account for?
Love peer to peer. Okay. I didn't talk about that's allyship. So I look at sponsorship, allyship, and mentorship as three different things. Allyship tends to be more peer to peer. I love peer to peer. The as long as the principles of sort of the code of ethics are being applied. In other words, if your peer is competing with you, are we psychologically safe? I don't know. I guess we have to see, right? If we're competing, if there's only one job. And so I love allyship. Love it. I find that peer-to-peer mentoring tends to be better done in groups than one-on-one, right? Why? It's safer. You've got a community of potential like-mindedness, right? And there's lots to share across that like-mindedness peer group, whereas mentor-mentee needs to be much more intimate with boundary.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes left. There are a few people in our chat, Pat, that are asking if you are accepting new mentees at this time.
The answer is yes. And again, if you're interested, Sabrina can get in touch with me. And yes.
Wonderful. Um,
I saw a little heart go up.
yeah,
I can see the hearts. I can't see you guys, but thank
yeah,
you for the hearts. I'm very hearted.
definitely. So as we close out, one last comment I wanted to share was from Paul Mayer. He said, I really enjoyed the presentation. I'm in transition from 30 years of managing operations, people to independent consultancy. I see huge gaps in the potential in Gen Z, my MD daughter included, and how most manufacturers view the employment experience in general. I'd love to connect at some point.
Absolutely. Let's do that. That is a highly relevant and important conversation. I agree with you. We have an obligation, you 30-year-old person, 30 years, me, right? 48 years. We have an obligation to support them. We have an obligation to help them. That is our job. Our role in life at this point in time is to give back. So great conversation. Can't wait to have it.
Great. Thank you. And we just want to say thank you so much, Pat, for being with us today. And thank you again for Howmet Aerospace for sponsoring this webinar. We hope today's conversation offered valuable insights into the power of mentorship and sponsorship in manufacturing. We will be sending up a follow-up email with Pat's information as well as a mentorship opportunity with the Manufacturing Institute in case anyone is interested or was inspired by Pat's talk today. Um, So if you would like to sign up for it, you are able to scan the QR codes on the screen, or you can email us with any questions. Just as a reminder, this program is open to anyone working in the manufacturing institute or manufacturing industry, regardless of role or title. So thank you all again, and I hope
Thanks,
everyone has a
everybody.
wonderful day.
Thank you.